The official American unemployment rate managed to fall last month, primarily because 720,000 people entirely gave up looking for work. You are listening to the Daily Shear for Friday, July 3rd, 2026, and I am Lambert Woollingham. We will be examining the swift bureaucratic erasure of Austin street murals, the sudden repurposing of a massive physical video game factory in Austria, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation dedicating 200 analysts to audit boxes of 6-year-old ballots in Georgia. Our immediate geography remains a reliable engine of administrative friction and predictable development outcomes. We begin with the swift erasure of local character by state mandate. Austin transportation crews have been ordered to paint over and gravel over several prominent community street murals. The Texas Department of Transportation issued a strict directive requiring the elimination of all non-standard decorative roadway art. This mandate specifically targeted the distinct Texas-themed crosswalk on Guadalupe Street, as well as the Black Artists Matter installation on East 11th Street. Municipal public works officials initially attempted to petition the state to spare these specific community installations, but the Transportation Department remained entirely unmoved, forcing the city to submit formal compliance and removal plans immediately. It is always remarkable to witness the sudden, ruthless efficiency a state transportation agency can muster when it comes to destroying public art compared to the decades it requires to properly expand a single highway lane. State Representative Nate Schatzline is stepping down from his legislative seat in the Texas House to accept an appointment within the executive branch. He will be joining Governor Greg Abbott's administration to lead what the office refers to as election integrity policy. This sudden resignation cuts short the Fort Worth Republican's term, and it transitions him from a highly visible public-facing lawmaker into a backroom architect of state voting guidelines. This high-level policy shuffle occurs just months before the highly contested November midterm elections, which sends a clear signal regarding the governor's commitment to tightening administrative control over local voting procedures across the state. His abrupt departure will naturally trigger a special election to fill the vacancy. It is a seamless migration from the loud performative theatre of the legislative floor to the quiet, insulated machinery, where the actual rules of the franchise are written. An analysis of state economic development awards has revealed that the Austin metropolitan area is capturing an absolutely colossal share of the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Fund. The region has secured approximately $358 million in grants, which represents a staggering 80% of the state's total funding allocations distributed thus far. This designated capital is flowing directly to high-profile chip makers, material suppliers, and educational programs, with major players like Samsung, ARM, and Comico serving as the primary beneficiaries. The state claims this is a coordinated effort to firmly anchor the hardware manufacturing ecosystem within Texas borders. The multi-million-dollar handouts certainly reinforce the reputation of Central Texas as a premier technology hub, though they also highlight the durable political consensus that the best way to support a highly profitable private hardware conglomerate is to simply hand it massive amounts of public tax revenue. In a rare victory for suburban homebuyers, a Williamson County jury has delivered a severe verdict against a local residential construction company, finding the home builder liable for statutory fraud, common law fraud by non-disclosure and deceptive trade practices. The lawsuit was filed by a homeowner who experienced severe undisclosed water accumulation on their property shortly after purchase. The plaintiff accused the builder of systematically hiding severe flood risks during the sales process. The jury agreed, ordering the company to pay damages for breach of contract and unconscionable conduct. As developers continue to rapidly grade over the prairies on the outskirts of Austin, real estate speculation frequently outpaces basic watershed planning. It turns out that burying a known environmental liability under fresh sod and a thin layer of marketing does not actually alter the physical flow of groundwater during a heavy rain. Suburban budget discipline has claimed a seasonal casualty this year, as the city of Pflugerville officially announced it will not host its traditional 4th of July fireworks display. Local officials publicly blamed the cancellation on extremely tight municipal budgets, stating that remaining resources simply must be prioritized for essential city services rather than celebratory explosions. While neighboring municipalities are proceeding with their fully sanctioned public displays, this fiscal retreat by Pflugerville highlights the quiet, structural financial strain currently squeezing local governments across the region. Administrators were forced to heavily audit their holiday spending, and the explosives were the easiest line item to cut. For disappointed residents expecting a brilliant visual display, the dark, empty night sky will serve as a highly visible, involuntary monument to municipal austerity. The broader market continues to demonstrate that reality is largely a matter of creative accounting and well-timed price cuts. Tesla has managed to secure a temporary reprieve from its prolonged global sales slump, officially surpassing Wall Street estimates for second quarter deliveries. The recovery, however, was not driven by organic enthusiasm, but almost entirely by rebounding demand and aggressive price cuts throughout Europe. Those European discounts successfully offset the persistent, dragging weakness the automaker continues to face in the highly competitive North American market. Tesla produced over 451,000 vehicles during the 3-month period, heavily prioritizing its high-volume Model 3 and Model Y variants. These better-than-expected delivery figures provide a critical financial cushion for Chief Executive Elon Musk. The company desperately needs to justify its premium market valuation by moving physical metal, primarily so it can continue pouring massive amounts of capital into highly speculative artificial intelligence and autonomous driving programs. The post-pandemic hiring boom in the American labor market has ground to a sudden, scraping halt. Employers added a mere 57,000 jobs in June, which is roughly half of what economists had confidently projected. Furthermore, the Bureau of Labor Statistics slashed its payroll estimates for the previous 2 months by a combined 74,000 positions. The service sector absorbed the heaviest blow, with restaurants, bars, and hotels cutting 61,000 jobs. This represents a stark disappointment for hospitality businesses that had desperately expected the ongoing World Cup to trigger a massive consumer windfall. When a macroeconomic trend collides with physical reality, you generally find thousands of overstaffed hotel managers staring at empty lobby bars, wondering why an international soccer tournament failed to solve their structural revenue problems. The Federal Trade Commission has ordered the travel booking platform Hopper to pay a $35 million penalty to settle allegations that the company systematically defrauded its own consumers. Federal regulators explicitly accused Hopper of deploying deceptive digital design choices, commonly known in the industry as dark patterns, to intentionally hide administrative fees. The platform was designed to mislead travelers regarding the actual final costs and the supposed benefits of its intermediary services. Under the strict terms of this settlement, Hopper must pay the multi-million-dollar fine and implement comprehensive compliance measures to scrub its application of these manipulative billing practices. This enforcement action highlights a growing federal campaign against online booking intermediaries. Regulators have essentially formally acknowledged that an entire sector of the travel industry is now structurally dependent on hoping the customer clicks the purchase button before they manage to read the fine print. A prominent group of commercial egg producers has agreed to pay $3,300,000 to officially resolve a federal price-fixing lawsuit spearheaded by the Department of Justice and a coalition of 17 state governments. The sweeping antitrust complaint accused the companies of conspiring to restrict supply and artificially inflate the cost of eggs for grocery stores and independent distributors across the country. In addition to the monetary payout, the settling producers are legally required to donate more than 53 million eggs to regional food banks and non-profit organizations. Matt Stoller frequently notes how agricultural monopolies use supply chain volatility as a convenient cover to extract higher margins from regular households, and this case is a perfect illustration. The cartel successfully manipulated the market during a crisis, and their punishment is a mild financial penalty coupled with the logistical nightmare of offloading millions of highly perishable items. The physical video game disc is steadily entering the museum of obsolete media formats. Sony has formally announced plans to phase out disc manufacturing entirely at its massive Thalgau facility in Austria. This specific plant currently serves as the global headquarters of Sony's disc-making division, churning out roughly 600,000 physical discs every single day. Instead of pressing games, the company will retrain its 300-person workforce to manufacture optical microlenses. Sony intends to slash the facility's disc production volume by 90% over the next 2 years, gracefully pacing the gaming market's final migration to all-digital storefronts. Hardware manufacturers and publishers are eagerly abandoning physical supply chains, not out of technological necessity, but to permanently eliminate retail overhead and cement absolute, revocable control over your personal software collection. The national and international stage offers its usual procession of ideological litigation and heavily choreographed state theatre. A federal appeals court has handed a significant victory to the Trump administration's cultural agenda, ruling that the federal government is under no legal obligation to restore historical and scientific materials that were removed from national parks. This appellate decision completely overturns a lower court order that had previously sought to force the reinstatement of educational signage addressing climate change, immigration history, and the legacy of slavery. The panel of judges ruled that the administration maintains broad, discretionary authority over the curation of public monuments. Environmental and historical preservation groups heavily criticised the ruling, warning that it allows the government to convert national parks into ideologically sanitised public spaces. It essentially confirms that the official curation of American history is legally recognised as an exercise in selective forgetting, shielded from judicial review by design. In a separate judicial ruling, a federal appeals court has struck down a central pillar of the administration's hardline immigration enforcement strategy. The court ruled that the government cannot legally hold detained migrants indefinitely without providing basic judicial review. The panel explicitly declared that federal agencies are completely barred from detaining individuals beyond 90 days without providing a formal bond hearing. Citing fundamental Fifth Amendment due process protections, the court rejected the argument from the Justice Department that certain classes of undocumented migrants could be held indefinitely under mandatory detention guidelines. This decision establishes an absolute constitutional barrier to prolonged administrative warehousing. It forces federal immigration authorities into the profoundly uncomfortable position of actually having to defend their custody decisions before an active immigration judge, rather than relying on the silent friction of indefinite confinement. Louisiana's top law enforcement official is now facing a major criminal prosecution of her own. A New Orleans grand jury has officially indicted Republican Attorney General Liz Muriel on multiple felony charges, including 16 individual counts of malfeasance in office and public intimidation. This sweeping indictment stems directly from a series of aggressive warning letters Muriel sent to Democratic municipal leaders in New Orleans regarding their local policy actions. Muriel's defense team immediately dismissed the charges as a politically motivated stunt, while Republican Governor Jeff Landry publicly vowed to issue a full pardon as quickly as state law will allow. The indictment represents a dramatic, hostile escalation in the ongoing power struggle between conservative state executives and progressive municipal administrations. It also clarifies that the state criminal justice system is currently operating as little more than an elaborate waiting room for a preordained executive clemency. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has quietly directed more than 200 investigative analysts and specialists to flood into Fulton County, Georgia, massively expanding its ongoing probe into the county's 2020 election records. An internal directive explicitly instructs agency staff to treat the Fulton County inquiry as a priority operation immediately following the physical seizure of hundreds of boxes of ballots earlier this year. This dramatic scale-up represents a highly unusual deployment of federal investigative resources to a closed election cycle that was decided over half a decade ago. Congressional Democrats have sharply criticized the sudden surge as a politicized abuse of federal law enforcement. The agency is dedicating an extraordinary amount of taxpayer-funded analytical power to meticulously reconstruct a paper trail, seemingly in search of a retrospective narrative that can successfully validate a long-standing executive grievance. Iran is currently preparing to launch a massive, highly choreographed 6-day state funeral for former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The Ayatollah was killed 4 months ago during the opening salvo of military strikes launched by the United States and Israel. These long-delayed ceremonies, which are set to begin in Tehran, represent a calculated effort by the Iranian regime to project an image of regional strength and unwavering political survival. State organizers have conceived this epic display of national mourning as a clear, broadcasted message of resistance to Western adversaries. The event happens to coincide with highly volatile, fragile peace negotiations with the United States regarding the security of Persian Gulf shipping routes. The sudden public emergence of senior military commanders who had previously been unseen for months demonstrates that the regime views a funeral not merely as a memorial, but as a strategic proof of life for its command structure. Consider the logistical reality of 53 million eggs. An agricultural cartel is caught fixing prices, and part of their official punishment is to donate 53 million eggs to regional food banks. This sounds like corporate restitution until you think about the physical object itself. An egg is fragile. It is highly perishable. It requires constant, unbroken refrigeration from the farm to the moment it is consumed. The federal government has decided that the appropriate penalty for a multi-million-dollar corporate crime is to suddenly inflict a tidal wave of rapidly rotting protein onto a network of non-profit charities that are primarily staffed by volunteers in minivans. The food banks now have to source industrial refrigeration, manage emergency distribution logistics, and frantically hand out cartons before the inventory spoils. The egg producers did not pay a penalty. They successfully weaponized their own overstock and outsourced their commercial waste disposal to the Department of Justice. That concludes the official record for today. Try not to let the administrative state catch you painting a crosswalk. If you need me, I will be attempting to calculate exactly how many omelettes Lambert Woollingham would need to consume to make a dent in a federally mandated agricultural surplus. The day has been shorn until tomorrow.